Then came the moment everything shifted. The news that changed their lives forever. Kate was pregnant. It didn't hit her like joy or fear, it hit her like silence. A heavy, overwhelming silence that made her realize she was stepping into a future she wasn't prepared for. She didn't have money. She didn't have support. She didn't even have a stable home of her own. But she had one thing she hadn't had before: responsibility. A tiny, fragile reason to hold herself together. And in that moment, she believed this baby would fix everything. That becoming parents would force them to grow up, to stay together, to build the life she never had. But that hope wasn't shared by Tommy's father. He reacted with confusion, frustration, and fear. Not because he didn't care about her, but because he cared about his own freedom more. He wasn't ready. He wasn't steady enough. He wasn't willing to trade the life he lived for the life Kate dreamed about. And for Kate, that rejection cut deeper than anything she'd felt before. It wasn't just a breakup. It was the moment she realized she was on her own again. Completely alone, with a future that looked nothing like she imagined. Still, she stayed. She tried. She believed he would change. But deep down, the cracks were already forming. He came and went on his own terms. He showed up when he felt guilty and disappeared when things got heavy. Kate didn't scream or beg. She just waited, hoping he'd choose her someday. But people who are half in and half out never truly stay. This was the start of Kate's slow unraveling. The moment where survival stopped being about herself and started being about the child growing inside her. A child who would one day become Tommy Egan, the man known for fire, loyalty, violence, and pain. Traits he inherited long before he ever opened his eyes. And Kate, carrying all her fears and hopes at once, had no idea she was about to raise a son who would change the entire power universe forever. When Tommy finally came into Kate's life, it wasn't in a moment of peace or stability. It wasn't after she had figured herself out or built a safe home. He arrived in the middle of chaos, as if the universe wanted to test her before she even had the chance to breathe. Kate held him for the first time with shaking hands, not because she didn't love him, but because she feared she wasn't enough. The weight of being a mother didn't fall on her gently, it slammed into her like a wave she wasn't ready to swim through. But even in that fear, there was something honest, something raw. For the first time, she felt a kind of love she couldn't run from. In the beginning, she tried. She really did. She wanted to be better than the world she came from. She wanted to give Tommy the childhood she never had. She imagined quiet nights, a steady home, and a life where he didn't have to hear the kind of arguments she grew up with. But the streets of Chicago aren't kind to dreams, and the past doesn't let go just because you beg it to. Bills piled up. Jobs slipped through her fingers. People she trusted vanished. And every time she tried to build something stable, it broke apart faster than she could fix it. Tommy's father drifted in and out, leaving more questions than answers each time he reappeared. He wasn't a partner, he was a shadow. An unpredictable presence that confused Kate and confused Tommy even more. Sometimes he showed up with charm and promises that felt real in the moment. Other times he disappeared without explanation, leaving Kate to carry the weight of everything alone. And slowly, that cycle began to wear her down. Not all at once, but piece by piece, like erosion you don't notice until the ground beneath you collapses. As the pressure grew, Kate's old habits started creeping back. The late nights, the escapes, the things she used to rely on when she felt powerless. She told herself she could handle it. She told herself she could quit anytime. She told herself it was just to take the edge off. But addiction doesn't ask for permission. It slips in through the cracks, takes hold of your weakest moments, and convinces you that it's helping even while it's destroying everything you're trying to build. Tommy grew up in the middle of this storm. He saw more than a child should see. He heard more than he could understand. And he learned early that he had to protect himself because the people around him were too busy fighting their own demons to protect him. He learned anger before he learned patience. He learned loyalty before he learned trust. He learned survival before he learned peace. And those lessons shaped him in ways Kate didn't even realize. But here's the part people forget. Kate didn't let her son go hungry. She didn't stop loving him. She didn't stop trying, even when she was failing. Love doesn't always look gentle. Sometimes it looks messy, loud, desperate, and broken. And that's the kind of love Kate had. The kind she had been taught. The only kind she knew how to give. There were nights she held Tommy close and promised herself she'd change. There were mornings she tried to start over, but the cycle always pulled her back, and the guilt made everything worse. Still, Kate had moments, real, human moments when she showed Tommy the softness she tried to hide from the world. Moments when she made him laugh. Moments when she gave him advice that came from a place of pain but delivered with honesty. Moments when she looked at him and saw the only good thing she had ever created. Those small glimpses of love are what made Tommy loyal to her. No matter how much she disappointed him later in life, but underneath those moments was a truth that shaped both of them. Kate wasn't just raising a son, she was fighting her own survival every single day. And Tommy wasn't just growing up, he was absorbing the chaos that would one day turn him into the man who built a name in blood, loyalty, and fire. Kate didn't plan to raise a legend. She didn't expect her child to become a force in the criminal world. She simply did the best she could with the broken pieces she had. And by the time Tommy was old enough to see the world for what it really was, he understood something most kids don't. Love doesn't always save you. Sometimes it scars you. Sometimes it hardens you. And sometimes it turns you into someone the world learns not to cross. Kate Egan didn't create the monster. She created the survivor. And the survivor chose his own path. As Tommy grew older, the world around him sharpened in ways that most kids never experience. The home that should have protected him instead taught him how to build armor. He didn't grow up learning softness or patience, he learned reaction, survival, and instinct. Every room in that apartment carried a memory he never asked for. Every argument between Kate and whoever came through the door was another lesson in how unpredictable life could be. He didn't just watch chaos. He studied it, absorbed it, and later used it like a weapon. And the truth is, the streets shaped him, but Kate lit the first spark. By the time Tommy was old enough to understand right from wrong, the lines were already blurred for him. He'd seen his mother cry one minute and laugh the next. He'd seen strangers become family for a day and enemies the next week. He learned early that people were temporary, loyalty was rare, and trust was dangerous. So he started depending on himself. Not because he wanted to, but because he had no choice. Kids don't grow up fast because they want to. They grow up fast because the world refuses to slow down for them. He walked through Chicago with eyes that were too aware for his age. He watched everything. He listened to conversations adults didn't think he understood. He noticed who had power, who faked it, and who was pretending to survive just like him. And even as a child, he carried a fire inside him, a fire made of frustration, hunger, and a deep need to prove he mattered. Kate didn't always see it, but that fire was her reflection in him. Her stubbornness, her resilience, her refusal to stay down no matter how many times life hit her. But the thing about kids like Tommy is that they don't just adapt, they transform. He became sharper with every mistake he witnessed. He became colder with every broken promise. And he became loyal with a depth that only comes from growing up around people who constantly let you down. His loyalty wasn't naive, it was selective, fierce, and dangerous. If Tommy cared about you, he'd fight for you. If you betrayed him, you were done forever. That mindset didn't appear out of nowhere. It was carved into him through years of emotional whiplash. Kate, in her own way, shaped this side of him without even knowing it. The nights she disappeared, the moments she broke under pressure, the times she tried to fix things only to fall back into the same habits. Tommy watched it all. But he didn't grow bitter toward her. He grew protective. Even as a kid, he felt responsible for her, like he needed to keep her from falling apart completely. He became the adult in the relationship long before he ever should have. And that role gave birth to the fierce sense of control he carried into adulthood. But there's another side to the story, the one people don't talk about. The softer moments. The rare nights when Kate was clear-headed and honest. When she opened up, not as the messy woman we see later in Power, but as a mother who loved her son deeply, even if she didn't know how to show it. Those moments were the real foundation of Tommy's complexity. They taught him love wasn't always perfect. It wasn't always safe, but it mattered. And that's why, years later, Tommy could kill without hesitation but still cry over loyalty. That contradiction wasn't random, it was learned. Everything you thought you knew about the Power universe is about to flip upside down. Because the truth behind Kate Egan's past, the part nobody has ever talked about, is finally coming to light. And once you hear what her childhood may have looked like, you'll understand why Tommy Egan grew up with so much rage, loyalty, and pain. This story isn't clean. It isn't simple. And it definitely isn't soft. This is the beginning of Kate Egan. Before the chaos, before the drugs, before Tommy. Before everything fell apart. From the outside, Kate Egan's early life may seem like just another rushed Chicago story. But dig a little deeper and you'll find the cracks that shaped her into the person we meet in the Power universe. Before Kate became the loud, messy, and unpredictable mother we all know, she was a young girl trying to survive in a world that was never built to protect her. Chicago in those days wasn't just tough, it was a battlefield of broken families, small-time hustles, and neighborhoods where everybody was fighting to climb out of the life they were born into. And Kate was right in the middle of it. Growing up, she didn't have a stable home, not even for a moment. Every door she opened came with a different smell, a different argument, a different kind of disappointment. Some days it was loud shouting in the next room. Some days it was someone slamming a drawer. Some days it was silence so heavy it felt like the entire house stopped breathing. Kids around her went to school like normal, but Kate, she was learning how to read people, how to dodge danger, and how to stay one step ahead of trouble before she even knew what trouble really meant. People often see Kate as someone who made bad choices, someone who got lost in her own escape routes. But no one asks why those choices felt like the only options she had. When you grow up watching adults fall apart, you either fall with them or you learn to build walls even if they're crooked and cracked. Kate built walls fast. She learned to laugh loud so no one could hear the fear under her voice. She learned to be tough so no one could see how lost she felt. She learned to survive in a place where everyone was just trying not to sink. Even before Tommy was born, Kate was already carrying the weight of her world alone. She didn't have a guide, a mentor, or even a real friend to pull her in the right direction. And the people she did trust, they didn't stay long. Some left by choice. Some left because life pushed them away. Some were taken by the streets completely. The older she got, the more she realized that love wasn't something you got for free. You had to fight for it, chase it, or sometimes settle for a broken version of it just because broken love was better than no love at all. This is the part of Kate's life the Power universe has never shown, but Power Origins might. And if they do, we'll finally see the raw truth behind the woman who shaped one of the most powerful and dangerous characters in the entire franchise. Because young Kate wasn't born reckless, she was made reckless by the world around her. A world that demanded she grow up too fast, trust too little, and hide every soft piece of herself just to make it through the day. And the real twist? This is only the surface of her story. The part that comes next, how she meets Tommy's father, how her life spirals into addiction, and how she tries to raise Tommy while drowning in her own battles, is where the real drama begins. But before we get there, we have to understand one thing clearly. Kate Egan didn't choose chaos. Chaos chose her long before she even knew what the word meant. As Kate moved deeper into her teenage years, the world around her didn't just stay rough, it grew sharper, colder, and far more demanding. This was the stage of her life where the streets stopped feeling like background noise and started becoming the main voice guiding her choices. Every corner carried a secret. Every night brought new risks. And every person she met had two sides, the one they showed and the one they hid. Kate learned quickly that survival wasn't just about being tough. It was about being smart in ways nobody ever taught her. Her home life had already started falling apart by this point. The arguments in the house weren't just random storms anymore, they were full disasters that came without warning and left damage every time. Sometimes she'd walk into the kitchen and feel the tension like smoke in the air. Sometimes doors slammed so hard the walls shook. Sometimes she had to leave just to breathe. And the dangerous part was that Kate got used to it. Pain became normal. Fear became normal. Chaos became normal. And when chaos becomes familiar, you start looking for comfort anywhere you can find it. That's when Kate began drifting toward people who seemed exciting, wild, and free. People who looked like they didn't have rules. People who lived fast because slowing down meant feeling everything they were running from. These were the types of people who filled the streets of Chicago at that time, young, lost, and desperate for something better, even if better was just a faster escape. Kate didn't see them as trouble. She saw them as a way out of her own head, a distraction, a temporary warmth in a city that never gave her any. But underneath the excitement, there was something else growing, something she didn't notice at first. Her anger. It wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was quiet, steady, and always there, sitting right under her skin. She carried years of disappointment, fear, and loneliness, and she had nowhere to put it. No one to talk to. No one who understood the war she was fighting inside. All she had were the streets, the noise, the late nights, and the small moments that made her feel alive for just a few minutes at a time. Kate wasn't chasing danger. She was chasing a feeling she thought she'd never get control. When everything else in your life is unpredictable, even a small amount of control feels powerful. So she made choices that made sense in the moment, even if they were the type that could come back to haunt her. She went places she shouldn't have gone. She trusted people she shouldn't have trusted. She followed impulses she wasn't ready to face. And every time she pushed deeper into that world, the line between right and wrong blurred a little more. This is the chapter in her story where you can see the early signs of who she would become later in life. The quick decisions, the reckless bursts of emotion, the fear of being alone, the constant need to feel something strong enough to drown out everything else. These weren't random flaws, they were survival habits she'd built from years of instability. And the truth is, if Kate had been given even one stable hand to hold onto, her path might have looked completely different. But fate doesn't play fair, especially in the power universe. One night, everything changed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't violent. It was simple, almost too simple. One conversation, one meeting, one choice that seemed harmless at the time but would shape the rest of her life. This was the night she crossed paths with a man who would change her story forever. A man who carried his own darkness. A man who had charm, but also danger. A man who would eventually become the father of Tommy Egan. And Kate had no idea that the moment she stepped into his orbit, her entire world was about to shift again this time in a way she could never escape. Meeting Tommy's father didn't feel like a warning sign or a turning point for Kate. It felt like a breath of air after years of drowning. He walked into her life with a confidence she had never seen before, calm, controlled, and steady in a way that made her feel safe for the first time. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam doors. He didn't carry the storm she grew up with. To Kate, he looked like everything her world had been missing. But like most things in the power universe, what looks solid on the outside is usually hiding something broken underneath. At first, Kate didn't notice the shadows around him. She didn't see the long nights, the hidden conversations, the tension he carried in his shoulders. All she saw was someone who made her laugh, someone who listened, someone who treated her like she mattered. And for a girl who spent her whole life feeling invisible, that feeling was addictive. She wasn't falling for his charm, she was falling for the version of herself she got to be when she was around him. Confident, wanted, seen. The kind of girl she never believed she could be. But the truth is, he wasn't perfect. Far from it. Behind the cool smile and controlled voice, there were secrets Kate wasn't ready for. He had connections to people she didn't understand. He had habits he hid behind closed doors. He had battles he never talked about. Still, Kate didn't ask questions. She didn't want to break the illusion. She just held onto the feeling of finally being important to someone, even if it meant ignoring all the warning signs he should have paid attention to. Their relationship didn't explode into chaos right away. It started small. Missed nights, unanswered questions, sudden mood changes that reminded Kate too much of the home she was trying to forget. But emotional damage teaches you dangerous lessons. You learn to forgive things too fast, accept things too easily, and pretend things are normal even when nothing is. Kate kept quiet because losing him felt scarier than dealing with the red flags in front of her. Slowly, the warmth between them began turning into something colder. Arguments replaced laughter. Distance replaced comfort. And for the first time, Kate felt that familiar sting of being unwanted all over again. But instead of walking away, she held on tighter. Because when you've grown up with instability, even a broken bond feels better than no bond at all. She didn't understand yet that she was repeating the cycle she swore she'd escape.